On the 17th layer of the Abyss of Destruction, Feather Emperor calmly faced Luo Feng. Knowing that Luo Feng wanted world envoys to assist his cultivation, Feather Emperor offered to arrange their cooperation if Luo Feng could defeat him. Unlike a malicious struggle for control of the destruction world, this was a direct contest between the two lords, and Feather Emperor did not summon world envoys for assistance. Feather Emperor immediately released an enormous domain of light, combining the power of feather and light with the support of the mysterious Feather Realm. Its power was terrifying enough to reduce the strength of an ordinary ancestor by half. However, Luo Feng transformed into blade light and instantly tore through the countless luminous obstructions, seemingly slicing Feather Emperor apart. Feather Emperor remained unharmed because his movement technique had reached the level of omnipresence, allowing him to exist at numerous positions at the same time and change his location according to his will. Even with the support of the Blood Crane territory, Luo Feng could not touch him. Luo Feng then used the life lock of the primordial life and death Dao together with his saber technique. Countless blade lights spread throughout space and time, locking onto all of Feather Emperor's energy and destroying every strand of light. Within only a few moments, more than 100,000 enormous blade lights filled the destruction world, occupying roughly 1/3 of its area and pursuing Feather Emperor from every direction. Although each blade light was much weaker because it had to maintain the lifelock, Luo Feng compensated through sheer quantity. His energy reserves were enormous, and the energy he recovered in each moment was slightly greater than the total energy reserves of Feather Emperor's entire body. Feather Emperor therefore admitted defeat, saying that he had not expected to be unable to evade Luo Feng's blades. Within the Abyss of Destruction, he could endure through the continuous energy supply, but outside, he would have to escape within only a few moments. Luo Feng understood that Feather Emperor's omnipresence allowed him to cross many spaces in a single step and escape the range of his blade technique. Feather Emperor then summoned 200 world envoys to besiege Luo Feng. The Infinite Ancestor, observing the battle from the 18th layer, realized that although he was slightly stronger than Feather Emperor, he would also be unable to break through Luo Feng's pursuit by tens of thousands of blade lights. The energy supplementation of the destruction world could allow him to endure. But in a normal combat environment, Luo Feng's true combat strength was superior. If Luo Feng went all out, he could easily break through their obstructions and leave a mark on the Shadow of Origin to control a layer of the destruction world. Their stealth and movement techniques would not be enough to stop him, as Luo Feng had already demonstrated by cutting away 80% of Kafu's body with 3 strikes. After more than one epoch, Luo Feng arrived at the 18th layer and fought the Infinite Ancestor. The Infinite Ancestor's combat style was similar to Feather Emperor's, but he possessed the additional advantage of infinite power, which gave his attacks greater explosive strength. However, Luo Feng's physical body was strong enough to withstand the combined attacks of dozens of ancestors, and with the enhancement of the Blood Crane territory, the Infinite Ancestor's attacks could not affect him. Luo Feng's blade lights filled the sky and used the lifelock to pursue all of the Infinite Ancestor's energy, leaving the Infinite Ancestor with no choice but to concede. Many forces and ancient existences closely observed Luo Feng's consecutive victories over Feather Emperor and the Infinite Ancestor. These results were within their expectations because they had already regarded Luo Feng as an existence possessing the highest level of combat power. Luo Feng then arrived at the 19th layer, where Yuan welcomed him happily. Yuan was delighted that the cultivator camp now possessed another lord with the highest level of combat power, since the strength of a camp's lords determined the brightness of its future. Yuan admitted that even he was not confident he could defeat the Infinite Ancestor. Luo Feng explained that against the Infinite Ancestor's omnipresence, he could currently only deplete his energy reserves. He had mastered only one supreme level of destruction power, and although the lifelock allowed him to combine his techniques with it, the strength he could currently display remained limited. If he completed the primordial blade path, his techniques would become far more powerful. Yuan arranged for 150 world envoys to besiege Luo Feng on the 19th layer. Luo Feng used the opportunity to carefully experience the latest form of destruction power and comprehend its mysteries. Although most of the 19 supreme levels of destruction power he had sensed so far did not contain the mysteries of life, he believed that every aspect could provide useful insights. His continuous exploration of destruction greatly increased his accumulation in this area. Luo Feng concluded that his decision to cultivate in the abyss of destruction had been correct. The bottleneck in comprehending the primordial blade path could be overcome by accumulating more insights into destruction, making the abyss of destruction an extremely efficient place for his cultivation. He felt that his accumulation in the aspect of destruction should already be sufficient. But he decided not to leave immediately because accumulation could never be excessive. Since each layer of the destruction world required only 1 or 2 eras to explore, he intended to finish traversing the abyss of destruction before returning to the cultivator territory. Although he had already reached the 19th layer without encountering any opportunity, Luo Feng did not dwell on it. Unlike other existences who explored the destruction world primarily in search of opportunities, his main purpose on every layer was to confront the world envoys. So his chances of encountering opportunities were naturally lower. Regardless, his primary objective had already been achieved. His accumulation was sufficient. Luo Feng determined that the next stage of his cultivation required him to integrate all his accumulated insights into a single whole. In addition, he needed to achieve heart and Tao harmony, perfectly merging his mind into the Tao in order to form the primordial blade path. Before entering the abyss of destruction, he had not clearly understood the obstacles ahead of him. Now, he had identified the 2 remaining major barriers as the integration of all his insights into one and heart and Tao harmony. After more than one epoch, Luo Feng asked Yuan to withdraw the world envoys. He decided to retreat and attempt to integrate his accumulated insights. If he failed, he could still continue to the 20th layer and the layers beyond it to accumulate more insights before trying again. Since different accumulations could produce different insights during the process of integration, Yuan happily watched Luo Feng construct a cave mansion and begin his retreat. Yuan also returned to his own cave mansion to continue comprehending the origin system of the primordial rule operation path. Meanwhile, Ice Mountain Master was waiting on the 20th layer, prepared for Luo Feng's challenge. However, after Luo Feng remained on the 19th layer for more than one epoch, withdrew the world envoys, and began cultivating in seclusion, Ice Mountain Master felt relieved. He knew that he was no match for Luo Feng. Yet as the leader of the Ice Peak camp, he was unwilling to let Luo Feng defeat him merely to enhance his reputation. He had even considered various ways to preserve his dignity in the event of defeat. But Luo Feng did not come to challenge him for the time being. During his retreat in the cave mansion on the 19th layer, Luo Feng repeatedly experimented with powerful techniques in an attempt to merge his insights into one and fully form the primordial blade path. Against the world envoys, he could fight casually and even confront them directly. But the process of integrating his insights required constant experimentation. With a casual flick of his finger, he produced a sharp blade light that tore through the heavens and earth. At another moment, he lightly grasped with 5 fingers, causing 5 terrifying blade lights to descend and form a blade formation that annihilated everything within it. Through continuous thinking, integration, and experimentation, the primordial blade path gradually became clearer in Luo Feng's mind. Eventually, Luo Feng lightly tapped with 1 finger, and a point of blade light pierced through the space-time obstruction of the entire 19th layer destruction world, even penetrating into the 20th layer and startling Ice Mountain Master. Suddenly, a space-time fluctuation swept over Luo Feng and caused his seated body to disappear. Yuan was shocked by the sudden disappearance and immediately contacted Luo Feng's other avatars. Luo Feng replied that he should have encountered an opportunity. Yuan was stunned and recalled that Cafu had once encountered an opportunity while exploring the 19th layer, entering a hidden space-time and obtaining the battle armor that had accompanied him for countless ages. Yuan could not help feeling somewhat bitter. Cafu and Luo Feng had both merely passed through the 19th layer, stayed there for a relatively short time, and encountered opportunities, while Yuan had resided there for an extremely long time and even controlled the entire layer without ever encountering one. Luo Feng is swept through countless layers of intertwined time and space toward the core of the abyss of destruction, which is surrounded by an immense vortex of destructive power capable of twisting and shattering time and space. The closer he gets to the core, the more concentrated and dangerous the time-space becomes. But the ripples carrying him naturally protect him from the destructive force. Yuan contacts Luo Feng's other avatars, while Luo Feng realizes that this isolated space completely cuts off all external detection, including time-space, life aura, and causality detection. He believes he has encountered a major opportunity and observes that the surrounding destructive power contains countless mysteries. With destruction as its core while incorporating life, matter, water, fire, wind, thunder, causality, darkness, earth, time, space, force, and other profound principles, the destructive power is so terrifying that even Luo Feng's body would be annihilated within moments. And perhaps only the initial could withstand it, although even the initial cannot reach this place. As Luo Feng is carried deeper into the vortex, he finally sees a massive black mountain that appears to be the source of all destruction. His sky-splitting saber trembles slightly in its presence, and he notices countless weapons, including swords, spears, and axes, embedded in the mountain, suggesting that the destruction weapons occasionally obtained from the abyss of destruction are nourished there. When Luo Feng emerges from the destructive vortex, the mountain of destruction becomes clearly visible. It is covered in flowing black mist and contains 34 clusters of light that resemble stars and form vein-like patterns across the mountain. Upon arriving at the mountain, Luo Feng receives a message stating that he is the third ultimate life form to reach the mountain of destruction and that anyone who passes 7 trials can control the entire abyss of destruction. This revelation surprises him, as the origin, core and method of controlling the abyss of destruction have always been unknown. Luo Feng realizes that 2 other ultimate life forms have already reached this place, and he considers whether one of them might be Kafu, who once obtained a precious battle armor from an opportunity in the 19th layer. However, none of the other 7 lords of the cultivator camp have recorded this location, meaning they either never reached it or deliberately kept it secret. Luo Feng concludes that strength alone is not enough to enter this hidden space, as some kind of screening threshold exists, and only 3 ultimate life forms, including himself, have passed it. He then approaches the mountain of destruction, where increasingly powerful invisible suppression eventually prevents him from flying. The 34 clusters of light converge into natural veins that form a mountain path leading from the foot to the summit, suggesting that the path is the only way to reach the top. At the foot of the mountain, Luo Feng discovers 7 sculptures representing the 7 trials. They include a massive bird of prey, a 9-headed giant serpent resembling the infinite great serpent clan, a mist-like figure with an eye resembling the undying hermit, a large cube composed of 125 smaller cubes, a black star, a black mountain resembling the mountain of destruction, and a miniature abyss of destruction containing figures of powerful beings who once controlled layers of the destruction world, including Ba Wei Yu, the primordial beast ancestor, Wulin, Jin, Ming Huang, Moman, Mogus, Feather Emperor, Kafu, the Infinite Ancestor, Yuan, the Ice Peak Ancestor, Starlight, and Sha Zhou. Luo Feng realizes that these 7 sculptures are the 7 trials, and challengers must defeat them in sequence, starting with the weaker sculptures before facing the stronger ones. Once all 7 are defeated, the challenger can control the entire abyss of destruction. The first trial begins when the bird of prey sculpture erupts with terrifying flames and attacks Luo Feng with movements resembling the Feather Emperor and the Infinite Ancestor, making it impossible for him to avoid the attack even with the Blood Crane territory enhancing his strength. Its blade-like wings tear through Luo Feng's protective energy, while its giant claws attack his chest. Luo Feng catches one claw with a single hand, erupts with 10,800,000,000 units of origin energy, and smashes the fiery bird into the ground. But the sculpture disperses into flames and reforms. It then attacks with terrifying 5-colored flames, forcing Luo Feng to endure the scorching assault before transforming into blade light and cutting through its head. The battle is extremely rapid, as the bird constantly gathers and disperses, appearing everywhere while possessing immense power and fierce flames. Luo Feng judges that although its techniques are somewhat crude, its overall strength ranks among the top 20 in the endless primordial space, comparable to the Infinite Ancestor before his breakthrough. During the exchange, Luo Feng identifies the location of the sculpture's energy core. When the flaming bird reforms again, Luo Feng unleashes 5 dazzling blade lights that form a terrifying blade formation, completely enveloping the sculpture and tearing through its body until they reach and destroy its core. The bird of prey then completely dissipates before reforming in its original form. Motionless, Luo Feng's victory allows him to leave a trace on the ground, giving him the ability to directly descend to this location in the future without traveling through the surrounding space again. As his trace merges with the ground, the mountain of destruction becomes more familiar to him, and the invisible rule restrictions disappear. The 34 clusters of light on the mountain also become completely clear, revealing their true nature as light formations composed of 34 types of supreme-level secret patterns representing the power of destruction. Luo Feng discovered that the essence of 34 different destructive forces was completely displayed before him. This was the main reason he had entered the abyss of destruction, to deepen his understanding of the destruction path. Previously, he had only experienced the destructive forces of the world envoys and deduced their mysteries himself. But his conclusions might not have been perfect. Now, all the mysteries were directly revealed before him. Although he had already accumulated enough understanding to reach the threshold of creating a primordial blade path, he knew that deeper accumulation would make the process smoother. The 34 light clusters each contained the complete mysteries of one destructive force, including the forces from the 1st to the 19th layers of the abyss of destruction. Luo Feng even wondered whether the abyss might contain exactly 34 layers. But he soon focused entirely on comprehension. After 30 eras, he had completely grasped the displayed mysteries. He then noticed that the 34 light clusters formed intersecting veins throughout the mountain of destruction. These veins perfectly integrated the 34 destructive forces into a unified whole, reminding him of the primordial's life core, which used one primary mystery and multiple complementary mysteries to form a complete system. Luo Feng realized that the mountain of destruction might represent a path centered on destruction that could theoretically combine all 34 destructive forces into one whole. However, this path was more suitable for ancestors than cultivator lords. Ancestors were born with life cores naturally nurtured by the infinite primordial space, allowing them to contain numerous mysteries. Cultivator lords, in contrast, had to comprehend and create everything themselves. A mysterious place could nurture highest-level powers, but it could not directly create a primordial-level Dao, because a Dao was a collection of rules that required personal comprehension and pioneering. The endless primordial space originally had no primordial-level Daos. They only came into existence after pioneers created them. Luo Feng therefore believed that cultivator lords possessed greater potential. They could rise from the lowest level, where they were insignificant before low-level primordial life, all the way to the pinnacle, where they could overpower all ancestors. Once a cultivator lord created one primordial level Dao, he became a highest level life form, and mastering 2 primordial level Daos would allow him to reach the pinnacle of the endless primordial. Since the mountain of destruction had guided Luo Feng inside, he concluded that he was also suitable to become its master. Luo Feng bypassed the 7 sculptures and explored the area around the mountain. As long as he maintained sufficient distance from the sculptures, they would not initiate combat. As he approached the mountain of destruction, he saw numerous weapons embedded within it, along with faintly visible twisted trees. Eventually, he arrived before the mountain itself. Its rock contained no visible gaps, while lines filled with a destructive aura covered its surface and black mist naturally condensed around it. Luo Feng reached out and touched the mountain. An immense, icy killing intent instantly surged into his body and spiritual consciousness. His powerful spiritual will managed to withstand it, but countless scenes of slaughter, destruction, hatred, and helplessness immediately appeared in his mind. He experienced the suffering of countless source world cultivators whose worlds and loved ones had been destroyed by innate primordials. Even a mere strand of aura from a world-level primordial life could become an irresistible catastrophe for an entire source world. Luo Feng saw cultivators desperately fighting against such overwhelming power, dying with hatred and unwillingness, as well as friends and families embracing each other while helplessly awaiting destruction. About 3 parts of the killing intent came from the innate primordials, while 7 parts came from the countless source world cultivators who hated their own weakness and the enormous difference in power. Experiencing these emotions directly affected Luo Feng far more deeply than merely observing the destruction of source worlds. His eyes became filled with killing intent. He realized that the innate primordial camp, the Ice Peak camp, and many other forces included world-level primordials and weaker ancestors who regarded source world origins as the best nourishment for their life cores. If the 8 lords tried to protect all source worlds, they would face far greater resistance than they currently did, and even the 3,600 world groups might eventually be affected. Luo Feng understood the truth behind his elder brother's words. The cultivator camp was still not strong enough. After the killing intent and memories faded, Luo Feng sensed new information from the Mountain of Destruction. It could condense precious destruction fruits that promoted the growth of ancestor life cores in the direction of destruction. Every defeated sculpture granted one fruit. A fruit could either be consumed or exchanged for a treasure nurtured by the mountain. One fruit could be exchanged for one item among 3,000 treasures, all of which were more precious than the sky-splitting saber, including powerful weapons and battle armor. Luo Feng noticed armor resembling Kafu's and suspected that Kafu might have defeated one sculpture and exchanged his destruction fruit for it. Since Luo Feng had no life core, consuming a fruit would not benefit him directly, so he planned to exchange the fruits for suitable treasures. However, he intended to defeat more sculptures first, since more fruits would allow him to obtain better treasures. Luo Feng felt that the abyss of destruction was guiding challengers toward becoming supreme existences in the direction of destruction. The Mountain of Destruction's veins and the destruction fruits both served this purpose. Based on the clues, he suspected that he, Kafu, and Sha Zhou were the three beings who had reached the Mountain of Destruction. Sha Zhou had only mastered 2 highest-level powers, yet her destructive strength far surpassed that of the Infinite Snake Ancestor and Ice Peak Ancestor and had allowed her to reach the 27th layer. Luo Feng therefore suspected that she might have visited the Mountain of Destruction and possibly consumed a destruction fruit, explaining the perfect combination of her 2 powers. For Luo Feng, the mountain offered several benefits: comprehending the destruction path, collecting destruction fruits to exchange for powerful treasures, and using the 7 sculptures as powerful opponents. If he defeated all of them, he might even have the chance to control this highest-level mysterious land. After finding no other gains, Luo Feng approached the 7 sculptures again. The bird sculpture remained motionless, but the second sculpture, a 9-headed giant snake, slowly awakened. Its body rapidly expanded until it covered the entire region around the Mountain of Destruction, coiling across the ground for more than 1 full circle while its 9 heads stared at Luo Feng. Its invisible dominance surpassed even that of the Infinite Snake Ancestor. Luo Feng was shocked that the second sculpture was already so powerful and wondered whether Kafu had only defeated the first one. He finally realized that the 7 trials were far more difficult than he had originally expected. The 9-headed giant serpent coiled around the entire Mountain of Destruction and confronted Luo Feng. Luo Feng was amazed by its enormous size but understood that a larger body did not necessarily mean greater combat strength. Since every lord or ancestor had an optimal size for combat and excessive expansion could weaken their power. However, the serpent's energy reserves were clearly far greater than those of the Infinite Snake Ancestor. Without warning, the serpent attacked, striking Luo Feng with tremendous force and sending him flying. Its tail possessed power comparable to the combined attack of 20 or 30 ordinary ancestors, and it continued attacking repeatedly before Luo Feng could perceive or evade its movements. Yet Luo Feng's defenses were powerful enough to withstand hundreds of strikes without injury. Instead of immediately defeating the serpent, he deliberately endured its attacks to study its abilities, valuing it as a rare opponent capable of matching him closely. The serpent then trapped Luo Feng inside its body and began shrinking while time and space collapsed inward. Attempting to crush him, Luo Feng realized that its abilities resembled those of the Infinite Great Snake Clan, which could fuse multiple members into multi-headed giant snakes. A 9-headed giant snake represented the clan's fusion limit. But this serpent's secret patterns were even more perfect than those of ancestor-level Infinite Great Snakes, and its aura was stronger than that of the Infinite Snake Ancestor. Luo Feng therefore concluded that it was a more perfect form of the Infinite Great Snake. This also made him wonder whether each of the 7 sculptures had a corresponding prototype. Since the third resembled the hermit, the fourth resembled the demon ruins, the fifth resembled a black star, and the 7th constantly changed according to external circumstances. Luo Feng also became increasingly curious about the abyss of destruction and the Mountain of Destruction, which absorbed killing intent, hatred, and intense emotions from the endless primordial space. The 9-headed serpent continued crushing Luo Feng with its body, but its combat techniques seemed clumsy and direct despite its immense strength. Luo Feng finally stopped holding back and drew his blade, cutting the serpent's body into dozens of pieces. However, the pieces quickly reassembled with little energy loss, and the serpent hid deep within the void. Luo Feng then unleashed 10 Directions Extinction, The 10 billion and 80 million origins within him burned 5% of his energy reserves, forming 10 terrifying blade lights that created the 10 directions blade array. This perfected technique was developed from his understanding of the 34 destructive forces within the mountain of destruction and represented an advancement of his 5 directions blade array. The array sealed the entire area, annihilated even the void, and prevented the serpent from escaping. Its body was repeatedly shattered into thousands of pieces until the continuous attacks finally reached its core. The 9-headed serpent dissipated and returned to its original sculpture, marking Luo Feng's victory over the second sculpture. Luo Feng understood that the serpent was extraordinarily powerful, with strength comparable to 20 or 30 ancestors combined and a body so resilient that even starlight might not be able to destroy it. Perhaps only Sha Zhou, aside from Luo Feng, could tear its body apart. Luo Feng then approached the third sculpture, the fog sculpture, which resembled the hermit. As he entered its range, the sculpture transformed into flowing white mist with eyes that observed him, and the entire surrounding world changed. Luo Feng found himself trapped in a fog domain even stronger than the domain of the primordial beast ancestor. Every movement became extremely difficult, and his blade lights were quickly worn down and absorbed by the mist. Even the 10 directions blade array could not be established because its blade lights were eroded too quickly. The mist then began contracting, becoming denser and greatly increasing its suppression. Luo Feng gradually became unable to move or wield his blade, while the mist wrapped around him like a liquid stream and strangled him. His powerful body, together with the shadow power and undying power from the blood crane territory, barely resisted the terrifying erosion. With no other techniques available, Luo Feng transformed his body into energy and merged with the 10 billion and 80 million origins to form an origin Great Destruction formation. Thanks to his mastery of the highest level of power of breaking and his deeper understanding of the destruction path, the formation's self-detonation power was roughly 20% stronger than during the camp wars. The formation then exploded with terrifying destructive energy, annihilating space-time and matter. Because the white mist had completely restrained Luo Feng and contracted to an extremely close distance, it suffered the full force of the explosion at point-blank range. Its resilient form was torn apart, its energy core was struck, and the entire mist stream was annihilated. The aftermath swept across the mountain of destruction, after which an invisible will gathered the remaining energy and reformed Luo Feng. New energy from the blood crane territory flowed through their connection and formed a new scarlet robe around him. When the third sculpture began reforming, Luo Feng was stunned and wondered whether he had truly won, feeling that his victory over the fog sculpture had been somewhat unfair because he had been forced to rely on origin Great Destruction while completely restrained. Luo Feng's entire energy reserve contained powerful spirituality and his spiritual will. Even after unleashing the origin Great Destruction, he could still recover 20% of his energy reserve. Looking back at his previous battle, Luo Feng admitted that his victory had been largely due to luck, because the third sculpture had comprehensively surpassed his current strength. According to the ancestors of the endless primordial space, a being that had reached the level of the third sculpture would already be considered undying and immortal. No matter how powerful the origin Great Destruction was, it would normally be unable to threaten such an existence. The reason Luo Feng had managed to win was because the 7 sculptures were tests, and each sculpture possessed an energy core that served as a weakness. This gave Luo Feng a narrow opportunity to defeat the third sculpture. Luo Feng understood that his own blade technique was still far inferior to the power of the origin Great Destruction. His blade technique placed him at roughly the same level as Starlight and Sha Zhou. However, the origin Great Destruction was on an entirely different level. It had been powerful enough to heavily injure the 3 giant god emperors and more than 20 ancestors, causing tremendous chaos within the army of the innate primordial camp and eventually forcing the 2 sides to stop fighting. Luo Feng had now relied on this same move to narrowly defeat the third sculpture. However, once a technique of this level had been revealed, it would no longer be effective if the opponent had the opportunity to prepare against it. Luo Feng then stepped forward and approached the mountain of destruction, reaching out to touch it once again. As before, the contact caused a powerful impact on his soul. He experienced hatred, killing intent, and countless different scenes that continuously struck his consciousness, causing his expression to become even colder. After enduring this impact, He once again sensed information regarding the destruction fruits and the treasures that could be exchanged for them. Luo Feng had now obtained the qualification to acquire 3 destruction fruits, which could also be exchanged for other treasures. He was surprised by the treasures available in exchange for 3 destruction fruits, because they were clearly on an entirely different level from those obtainable with only one. A single destruction fruit could cause a life core to evolve to a certain extent in the direction of destruction, or it could be exchanged for a treasure comparable to Kafu's battle armor. However, treasures exchanged for 3 destruction fruits would undergo a qualitative transformation, making them valuable enough to excite any ancestor or lord. There were 6 such treasures in total, and Luo Feng could choose one: a seed, a stone, a drop of water, a cluster of flame, a blob of golden liquid, or a ray of colored light. All 6 treasures were mysterious lands that had not yet fully matured. They were still in their embryonic forms, and each one was nurturing a single type of highest level power. The seed contained endless and vigorous vitality, possessing powerful toughness and a supreme life force. The stone was extraordinarily stable and immovable, containing a supreme defensive power. The other 4 treasures corresponded respectively to the highest level powers of water, fire, matter, and light. Although these treasures had been nurtured within the endless primordial space, they had not yet developed into complete mysterious lands. However, their primitive embryonic forms possessed an important advantage: they could be refined and carried around. A fully formed mysterious land was enormous. Even a relatively ordinary mysterious land such as the Blood Crane territory had taken Luo Feng 10 eras to move from its original location to a position beside the origin continent origin world. Some especially massive mysterious lands could not be moved at all. The embryonic mysterious lands were completely different. They could be carried around without placing any burden on their owner and could even merge into the body. A fully formed mysterious land, even if refined and controlled, could only unleash all of its power within its own boundaries. Once its owner left its territory, only a portion of its power could be borrowed from a distance, increasing the owner's strength by at most 30%. The embryonic forms, however, could be carried within the body, allowing their complete power to be utilized wherever the owner went. Even though each treasure only nurtured one type of highest level power, being able to borrow all of that power directly was still enormously beneficial. Since Luo Feng had not spent his entire life researching those powers like the ancestors who specialized in them, he estimated that he might be able to exert roughly 60 or 70% of their power. Luo Feng's defensive ability was already strong enough, so he was more interested in treasures that could enhance his offensive strength. Among the options, the Supreme Flame was closely related to both life and destruction. If combined with Luo Feng's understanding of these 2 aspects, it could potentially further increase his destructive power. The golden liquid also attracted his attention. It flowed like a sharp blade and seemed to possess the qualities of a natural weapon. It contained a type of highest level matter power, which was also beneficial to Luo Feng. More importantly, apart from life and destruction, the Tao of matter was his 3rd best area of comprehension. However, Luo Feng knew that comprehending the Tao of matter was hundreds of millions of times more difficult than comprehending life and destruction. The ray of colored light contained a type of highest level light power. If Luo Feng could master it, he might gain an ability that was ubiquitous, allowing his blade technique to exist everywhere. His attacks might also gain a certain hit characteristic similar to Ming Huang's ability, while the overall power of his blade technique could increase further. From the perspective of direct strength enhancement, Luo Feng believed that the ray of colored light would probably benefit him the most. However, from a long-term perspective and in terms of comprehension, the golden liquid seemed to suit him better. After considering the matter, Luo Feng decided not to choose immediately. He thought that after creating the primordial blade path, he might be able to defeat the 4th sculpture. If he could obtain another destruction fruit at that time, he might have access to even better treasures, making it wiser to wait. Luo Feng then turned his attention toward the 4th sculpture. It was a gigantic cube composed of 125 smaller cubes. Based on the power displayed by the 3rd sculpture, Luo Feng expected the 4th sculpture to be much stronger. He believed that if he fought it in his current state, he would probably suffer a very serious defeat. Even so, Luo Feng still walked toward the sculptures. While he had been studying the information regarding the treasures, his body had already completely recovered and returned to its peak condition.